Okay, welcome to this lecture about social sustainability. I'm a lecturer in environmental science at Lund University, and I've been working with the social aspects of sustainability for a long time. I am an educated biologist, but I've been working mostly in the social science area related to natural resource management, water, agriculture, but also the use of technologies to improve environmental problems. Today I will talk about social sustainability, and you've already had an introduction to sustainability where the lecturer probably have been talking about environmental, economic and social sustainability, and that this sustainability concept have three aspects. So I will dig a little bit deeper into the social sustainability part. So as you probably know, and if you don't know it, you need to have a look at the Brundtland report, Our Common Future. And in there, it's stated that sustainable development is able to answer the needs, or is a development that is able to answer the needs of the present generations without compromising the capacity of future generations to satisfy their own needs. So it's a sort of development where we actually will not destroy for the future. And this definition is important for the social part of this concept. This concept and this development is then aiming to produce well-being and quality of life for people now and in the future. And I will come back a little bit more and discuss what that well-being may mean and what quality of life may be. And as you may know, there is, you could say, three operational characteristics of this concept. First, and as I mentioned already, it's three-dimensional, or usually three-dimensional, environmental, economic and social. Then you have this other aspect where you have interlinkages between generations, impact on next generation, transmission between generation, and intra-generational generational equity. Then there is a third, you could say, motor or operational characteristic in this concept, and it's focus on people's capacity. And it's one is the participation in decision process. The other one is inclusion of everybody into this decision. And the third is improving capacity, so improving the personal capacity of achieving things in society to produce a better life for yourself and for others. And if we then go into the social sustainability part of this, it focuses on the possibility to be able to live in an environment that is able to provide good health and equality. So good health for the individual and equality between us as individual. And it focuses on the basic welfare and social systems and structures that are able to provide that good health. So this means that the social structure of society that can help us to provide this good health and equality. So that's sort of, you could say, the center of social sustainability. Several concepts are used in relation to this concept. One is well-being, and I have already mentioned that. The other one is justice, and the third one is power, and mostly linked to who has the power and who has not the power. And the third one is rights, focusing on the basic rights and human rights that have been defined in several international conventions. So these are these four concepts that actually frame what social sustainability is about. And maybe you may think now this is very floating in there and a bit abstract. I will come back to a bit later giving example in different fields of engineering so you can see what this could actually mean in practice. But one important factor here is that the individual is in the center. We are actually focused then on how society can provide and help the individual to have this good life and healthy life and life where that person is included in society and can also provide from his or her capacities to society's development. So the individual is in focus. I talked about these concepts about equity, that it should be equal between people, and that's a very important part of this social sustainability concept. Another part is diversity, that we are different. Some people have larger capacities than others. We are different in the availability, the possibility to access things. There are people in wheelchair, there are people that don't hear, there are people that may not speak the language in the same way, there are people that are small and young that we have to take care of especially or think about. There are people with more money and less money, which means that you may have access to society's services in different ways or possibilities in different ways. Another important part is also that to be able to create this society, it's important that there is a glue in society, there is an interconnectedness between people, that people actually are able to communicate and discuss, and there are platforms for discussions and decisions together. And linked to this also comes the aspects of democracy and governance. But if we say that the interconnectedness is more something on the social level between us as people, you can say that the democratic and governance structure are more linked to what kind of structure and social infrastructure a state or a society can create to help us to be interconnected with each other. And then also linked here we have the quality of life, which is a goal where we are actually trying to achieve the same type and a good type of quality of life for people. So now I will, starting from this little introduction into the different aspects of social sustainability, I will give a few examples of how could social sustainability matter for engineers. And I will give a few examples from urban development, from infrastructure development, which is mainly then transport, also sanitation, the use of or development of nanotechnology and ICT technologies. And also I will briefly discuss a concept that may be important for you to know about when or if you will work in the private sector, and that's corporate social responsibilities. So starting from urban development. As an urban developer, you work with thinking of the structure of houses or how houses could be situated in a city. Also, what kind of energy we will use to heat our houses, and all different aspects of a city. And in this context, it's really important to, from the social sustainability perspective, it's really important to think about the human here in that society or in that urban area. So for whom are we building the city? Who will benefit from the house you are developing or designing? Who will benefit from, and who will use the area, and in what way will that person use the area that you may be prospecting? And here we have to come back again and think about, okay, we have different people in society, they have different capacities, and the urban area we design, if we want it to be social sustainable, needs to provide possibilities for all types of people to live a good life in that urban area. Also, the people living in this area should be able to have a say in how this area should be developed or could be developed. So there are two important aspects, thinking of who will live there, but also that these people actually are able to express in a way how that urban area and urban space should be designed so they can live a good life in this urban space. In this area, and probably you who may have been studying this area, this social sustainability is quite strong and has been worked with for a decade or something. So I think that you may be familiar with this. You may also be familiar with different types of tools that you can use to involve citizens in urban planning and so forth. Then I will take another example, and that's related to the construction of roads and transport structures in society. And as you may know, we have a society with a lot of roads. They take a lot of space. We are dealing with trying to shift more people from cars to public transport. When we're developing these kind of infrastructures in society, it's also important to think from a social sustainability perspective. We can think of, for example, how much money do we put on road infrastructure, the cars, and how much money do we put on public transport. We also need to think who is using the road and who is using public transport to be able to balance the money and also balance the possibility of people. We know today that men are using cars to a larger extent than women. More women are using public transport to transport themselves to their work. I mean, depends on the work and the type, but these are aspects that are really important to consider when developing a bigger infrastructure. Then I come to another area which may be more important to and relevant in a developing country context, and that's sanitation. In a lot of bigger cities of the developing world of today, we are actually improving the infrastructure of water and sanitation. More and more people are connected to water toilets and so on. But there is also a large group in these bigger mega cities, for example, where a lot of people do not have connection. A lot of aid organization, but also governments and companies are now going in and trying to improve this infrastructure. This may be very good, but from another perspective, one problem can occur that there actually would be very costly for a lot of people. And if you are poor, living in a poor area which may not even be planned, and you may not have a work, then connecting your area to a toilet, and you will not be able to pay the water fee or the sewage treatment fee, then the solution of a water-based toilet may not be the ideal solution. And there is goals, international goals set up that all people should have access to water and sanitation. So here we have a dilemma. It doesn't mean that water toilet may be bad, but we need to think of the context of different societies and different cities. Another important aspect which may be more relevant here in Sweden is that we have there are social perceptions and ideas about unconventional types of toilets, and there are trials in different cities in Sweden where they've tried to introduce non-water-based toilets, and a lot of people are not very happy about that. They would like to prefer to have a water-based toilet. And this is also another aspect that's really important to consider, the perception and the understanding and the willingness of people to use one technology in relation to another one. I'm not judging here which technology is the best, because both of them had advantages and disadvantages. But thinking from a social sustainability perspective, it's also important to include what people feel about a technology. So now I'm moving into another example, and that's related to ICT. There is a lot of discussions now that ICT actually will help a lot of developing countries to improve their development, and there are proofs that it has done so. But there are also several issues related to these new technologies. They are changing social patterns, they are introducing costs, they are also introducing, as a lot of developing countries, especially in Africa, is using and demolishing a lot of electronic devices that we have discarded here in the developing world. So there are environmental issues linked to this ICT things as well. Another important issue may be that we know, and you know from the Arab Spring, that the ICT and especially social media has been used and used as a media to communicate and create links between people in society. But we also know today that social media may have its backsides, where a lot of a lot of information can be spread which may not be true. It may be used to manipulate large parts of the population, and these are ethical considerations that may be important to consider when developing technologies. What may be the ethical imprint or sort of social imprint of the technology you will be developing? And that's another important issue to consider and think and reflect about when thinking of social sustainability. Then I come to another one related to the nanotechnology, and here we discuss in society that nanotechnologies will help us to prosper and produce medical and drugs and so forth. I will not be lengthy on this issue, but it's important to think of both the ethical and the environmental impacts that kind of technology may pose to society. So as an engineer, when you're developing things, it's important to consider what may be the social, but also the economic and environmental imprint, and then balance it. Now I come to the last concept, and that's related to corporate social responsibility. And this is a concept that has been used by companies to handle the social aspects of sustainability, and also to provide a basis of how industry can take responsibility for social harm that they may cause. That may be linked to workers' rights and condition. It may also be linked to actually taking a part of improving the capacity of people in the country they are active in, for example, education or other kinds of training. I will not be very lengthy on this topic. I will just mention it because it will be an important part of things that you may need to handle if you work in private sector in the future. And there are loads of information on the internet on corporate social responsibility. There is also a lot of discussion of, is this good or is this not good? Is this actually just a greenwashing or not? I will not go into this, but I think you can read about this on the internet. I would suggest you to do that, because this is important to have a better understanding of what this concept can do and cannot do. It has been used for around 15 years, and so there are a lot of experience of how this actually works in practice. So, how should you then think when you will work in the future as an engineer, and when you will need to consider social sustainability? I think a good way is to actually picture a child, as you see here on the picture. Picture a child and think of what you are doing. How will that influence the life of this child? And that could be whatever, urban development, some kind of very high-tech technology. How will that help to ensure a good life for that child in the future? It could be your child. I have also prepared a reading list of 5 articles. I suggest you to pick the ones you think are most interesting for you. One is about social corporate responsibility. And one is about exploring the possibility of a systematic and generic approach to social sustainability. One is concerning social sustainability and sanitation. And one is about, is there a just social sustainability? And it's about ethics and the profession of engineering, which I think could be interesting for you. And one is about understanding and measuring social sustainability. And yes, that's all. Thank you for me.